everybody. How you doing? It's great to see so many of you here today. We've got a exciting panel. I'm going to say a big welcome to guests here in a sec. We're really looking forward to diving into the theme of content at scale with you all today. So I'll kick off with a quick round of introductions. I'm Zach Kitschke, Chief Marketing Officer here at Canva. I'm joined by, I'll go Marissa. Marissa Cranes, who is Vice President and Head of Global Social Media at Salesforce. Yes, please make her feel welcome.
This is fun. You guys are fun.
Marissa's been there for 10 years, leading an incredible team. I think it was over 160 people I read. Is that right?
We've got a lot of people doing social.
It's incredible. Next, we've got Nate Nicely from Dentsu. Nate's based in New York. Nate's really passionate about mentoring the next generation of marketers and creating compelling narratives for the world's top brands. So welcome, Nate.
Thank you for having me.
And then last but not least, Mark Singer is Chief Marketing Officer at Deloitte Digital. Mark also leads the Deloitte Agency Services and is based in New York too. Got a few East Coasters here today with us. And a fun fact, Deloitte has a connection to where we are today at SoFi, the home of the LA Rams and Rangers. And they worked with SoFi to create an immersive digital experience for fans and customers on game day. So there you go. We might have to ask a little bit more about that later. So yeah, thank you all. I'm really thrilled you could join us for this session. I guess as we came together and started to talk about some of the themes that we were all grappling with, the one thing we all kept coming back to was this notion of crafting and deploying content at scale. And so in a world where we're inundated with more content than ever before, we thought we'd spend some time unpacking that for you all today. So I'm going to jump into it. I'm going to make sure I leave some time at the end for questions. So please do think of questions, and we'll pass some microphones around at the end as well. But let's get into it. So I guess a big part of this morning was reflecting on this explosion in content. And the demand for scalable on-brand content is a challenge, definitely for marketing teams. So I'd like to know, to get into it, how as senior marketers at some of the world's largest organizations, how's this shift affected your teams, and how are you sort of approaching scalability with your teams? I might kick us off with you, Marissa.
All right, so I'd say that AI was also a huge theme of everything we're seeing. And with the more content that we're seeing online in all different mediums, the more we're seeing a lot of sameness, right? We're seeing a lot of content that we don't know who it is from. And so while we're creating content at scale, we also have to be creating content that is truly authentic to our brands. And to do that, we have to know our audiences. We have to know who we're talking about. And what I like to talk about with social media is that it's no longer just social media. I'm trying to rebrand. You guys are going to test this on you. It's more shared spaces. We're not just pushing out content anymore. We're going back and forth, and we're getting to know those audiences. So we have to be able to scale how we build that creative so we can really dig into those shared spaces and how we interact with people online and build those authentic connections versus just pushing out AI content all the time.
Awesome. Mark, I might throw it to you. How are you folks thinking about that? Is it similar?
Similar, but a little different. So when I look at our business, I have less than 50 marketers, but I have almost about 2,500 people that are actually representing and living our brand, right? And every one of them are entrepreneurs. Every one of them thinks that they're creative. Every one of them is like in front of clients and so on. So like one of the things that we try to do is create more of a platform for our business, for our leaders to be able to be marketers themselves. And because if my team were to do that, I'd have to grow from 50 to 2,000 people just to be able to meet the demand of it. And so I think part of what we try to do is think about our role as sort of helping sales. We're mostly B2B organization, helping sales and enabling sales and creating all the marketing assets and materials in a ways that they can use them and know how to use them. So that's probably where we sort of differ a little bit on that, but yeah.
I guess it all comes back to this notion of distribution and putting the power in the hands of everyone that's needing to create these days. And so I know, Marissa, coming back to you at Salesforce, you've really spent a lot of time thinking about how to put those tools into more people's hands. Can you maybe touch on how you started working with Canva? And I guess what's been the goal for content and your creative teams?
So we definitely are one of those teams that's been on Enterprise for about 2 years now, and it is exciting. I recommend it for everyone. Do it, go. But I'd say one of the main things is that Canva came to my attention because a lot of smaller teams throughout the company, within marketing, outside of marketing, were all actually already using it. And they're using it in different ways for really different goals and for different pain points. And so when we finally got on a call to talk about Canva Enterprise, our eyes were lit up. We're like, oh my goodness, we can create brand consistency and more efficiency across our entire marketing organization. It got us really excited. But the thing that really went that little bit further was that Canva was also excited to work with us. And we actually had some great teams within Canva that helped enable us, helped bring a lot of our brand from other platforms onto Canva so we could start just head off running in the enterprise space.
Awesome, thanks for that. And Nate, how do you think about enablement for your internal teams?
So I think what's really interesting in the advertising space as well is right now the demand for personal, digital, and hyper-local content, which in the ad world, we've been using machine learning, dynamic content optimization for years. So it's really interesting to see kind of, I don't want to say the rest of the industry start catching up with us, but kind of be put into the forefront now of conversations. And so I think what we're thinking about is how can we help reduce those feedback loops? How can we give our teams more time? Because they're dealing with content in plus 100 different countries from one location. And so I think we're aiming to make sure we're closing the gap between kind of customer, team, and approver. And I think that loop is enabled by things like AI, powers like Gen AI, which is helping us close the distance between creative and effectiveness, also.
So we talked a little bit about distribution and enablement, and I don't think we could kind of move on without spending a bit of time talking about the skills that sit behind that. I think it's been amazing. You can see people lining up at the learning studio just across the way, more and more people kind of wanting to learn about design and creation. And there's this kind of sort of skill or behavioral shift that's needed to enable a world where more people are creating. So Mark, I know we were speaking a bit about this and how you think about it at Deloitte, but what's sort of been the shift in terms of people actually needing the skills to create, and how do you think about teaching and empowering?
So I think there's two sides for how we have approached this. So one is for the people that aren't marketers, that aren't creatives, and then also for our creatives. So on the marketer side, for the non-marketer side, it's actually teaching them this notion of not just storytelling, but story making, right? How do you actually not just tell a story, but shape a story in a way that creates both what you're trying to sell or what you're trying to communicate and make it align back with your brand. So there's a little bit of that. But then on our creative side, it's also teaching them how to create content in a way that they don't actually control the final outcome of that content. And it's hard for creatives, particularly ones that have grew up in a very traditional, I make something when it's finished, it's finished. Now it's, I make something and people will add to it, and how do I think about what I'm trying to create and communicate in a way that I'm confident what will be done with it will be good, and that's what we do.
I love that too, and we use it a lot, Canva, as like the final mile, where we have a lot of creatives that are taking us 25 miles in that marathon, and that final mile is done by non-creatives, but that understand the storytelling. And I think one of the things that's done for us is we've actually created trust with our creatives. You said it, when the creatives get very protective over their babies, and they don't want to see someone else touch it. And the relationships we've been able to build because Canva and because of the ability to say, we have these guardrails on, no one can really mess that up. Those relationships have really improved and allowed us to do more.
And interestingly, what I found is that copywriters, it's a lot harder for them because the words are so important and matter so much. Art directors, there's only so much that you can really be messing around with a design, but the words on the page are what matter. So we teach them, teach people how to use it. Limit, 15 characters, 25 words, like whatever that basis is, and teach people how to use it. So that's one of the things we try to get in part, and that frees them up to do a lot more in the end. So.
Marissa, I know learning and development is such a core part of Salesforce's culture. How do you teach design and visual communication as a skill?
A lot of teaching. I think especially within our creative teams, we have to, that is a huge part of our role. As a center of excellence sitting on like the core corporate marketing team, this is, as you noted, part of our culture to enable teams. Again, lots of great teamwork with the Canva CSMs to be able to build that content, bring them in at the right moments to teach people the new products. It's also a lot of encouragement and kind of inspiration, showing and not just telling people about the great work that you're able to do and being able to show folks, like, I actually just use Canva instead of CapCut to cut a TikTok, and it was this easy. People get excited about that, and then they want to learn more. So it's the inspiration to do more. It's actually bringing people in at the right time, and it is that culture of learning and growing.
What about you, Nate? I know you touched on storytelling as this kind of thread that flows through everything that we're talking about. How do you folks teach storytelling?
Yeah, and I think even from Bob's session this morning, I think in an advertising agency, everyone needs to be a storyteller. And I think it doesn't matter if you're in the functional side of the business, if you're in the client-facing part of the business, if you're creative, if you're a copywriter, media planner, you own the story. You're part of telling clients' stories. And so I think when we think about platforms like Canva, what they are able to do, and I like this, is turning everyone into a storyteller. And I think it is a mindset shift, it's a behavioral shift. How are you telling the finance team that they're also a storyteller? Because they're telling an internal story to a certain audience as well. And it seems like a million miles away from like creative, but it enables people to think differently. It enables people to see their roles differently. And I think sometimes my favorite thing, or I get the most pleasure, is when I see people start thinking about themselves a little bit differently. That, oh, I do know how to kind of communicate in a way that I haven't thought I've been able to before. And I think that's a really beautiful part of what we like to think about, like democratizing creativity and empowering everyone to be a storyteller. I think is really important. It's really important.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's interesting because storytelling is what sells. Stories sell, not features and functionality, not even sometimes not even outcomes. But and we all know this. It's making people dream. And so your finance person is selling internally. Your HR person is selling. Everyone that is communicating is selling. And once they actually realize that, like, oh, I need to find a way to connect with somebody and not just list the facts, then they start to unlock ways of being better storytellers in their own right. So
it's so funny that you're saying that, like, the features or the product details don't always work. If you look at like a B2C commercial on broadcast, you're going to see, oh, this cleaned this up. It doesn't really matter why or how, but like it did the job. When you see a lot of our B2B ads, it's like, here is this technical description, and we need to lean into the storytelling. It's the human side of it. No matter if you're selling to a business, you're still selling to a human. So
it's like I just saw the Salesforce spot on the train. You guys do that really well.
Sometimes.
So the final theme I wanted to dive into, and then I'll sort of throw it to the audience, was the only topic we haven't mentioned, which is Gen AI, of course. And so I'm curious how you're all seeing this new sort of technology that's emerging, changing or evolving these elements that we've spoken about. And so Nate, I might kick off with you. What's your view on Gen AI, and how do you see it fitting in with your team's workflows?
So it's been there already. It used to be called machine learning, like back in the day, or like that's what it's evolved into, sometimes we say. So it's embedded in kind of the ethos of our ad agency day to day. And again, I think what it does mostly, it's the same, I don't want to sound like a broken record, increases efficiency, allows people to be more creative. But how we view it at Dentsu as well is it allows people to spend their mind power in spaces where they wouldn't have been able to before. And there's an ethos that kind of I have in kind of my my career as well, the author Toni Morrison had a quote where she used to say, once you achieve a modicum of power, your responsibility is to reach back and empower somebody else. And when we think about what Gen AI is doing in our industries, it is allowing people who would never imagine that they could design this or communicate this or produce this in a certain way to just unlock something in their own creative journey, in their career journey, that allows them to, as you say, be better in the business, to bring us more products, to bring us more ideas, to bring us better strategies. And so that's what we see is Gen AI is an enabler. It is going to help us all work quicker, work better, and I think work more cohesively as well.
I know brand trust is one of the biggest areas of concern and focus for brands that are starting to use these tools. Marissa, how are you thinking about that and preserving brand trust and transparency, as you're using some of these new tools?
First of all, you guys talked a lot about your values in the keynote today, and that really resonated with me. And when we look at Salesforce values, our number one value, and this has been for 25 years, has been trust. We are looking at everything we do under that lens. Salesforce actually launched our first AI product to the public called Einstein in 2016. So we've been thinking about AI since, seems like the beginning of time. But it's been something that's been top of mind, and we've been building upon this whole time. And I think because trust is our number one value, we think about we do not steal, we do not use, we do not sell, we do not keep anyone's data that you're building your LLM on. And we don't only see that for ourselves and our own products, but we also hold everyone else that we work with to the same standard. So we're so excited about Shield. We're so excited about what we get to do with Canva in the future. But we also are looking at Gen AI in a few different ways. Salesforce, obviously a big B2B company, and so we're looking at Gen AI in terms of a business use case. We're looking at it for sales. We're looking at it for our internal products. But that means we also do get to look at a lot of the consumer Gen AI tools outside of what Salesforce owns. And so we get really excited. We are working with, of course, Canva and Writer to kind of test and learn and see how we can improve our marketing tech stack and make everyone more successful.
Oh, Writer's doing some cool stuff too, aren't they? Finally, Mark, I guess you've got an interesting sort of vantage point working with the marketing team at Deloitte, but also from your vantage point across the agency. What are you seeing?
So brand trust is very vital to us, and in a firm like ours, we're so diverse. We audit, we do tax, we do M&A, we do consulting, we do agency work, we do a wide variety. So maintaining trust and just in our little corner of the world is so super important. And that also makes us take a step back and think really hard about what are we using to the degree of very specific around tools, very specific around use cases, very specific around how do we activate. And what's interesting is that that's actually enabled us to work with our clients in a very different way, because everybody we all know this past few years, everyone's talking use cases, show me my use cases. I get it, right? Your CMOs, you're getting bugged by the board going, what are you doing with AI? And and then they come to the agency and go what are you doing with AI? And so what we've kind of found out is that the opportunity for anybody that's starting to venture into AI or Gen AI, and it's funny you said machine learning. It's not. This has been around for a while. It's just it's some
rebranded.
Yeah, exactly. It's just rebranded. I wish we tagged that one actually. So what we've actually started seeing is it's not so much about the use cases and figuring it out. It's about, is your organization ready for it, right? And that readiness looks at a number of different things. And I think Canva actually plays a really interesting role in this, right? Because the readiness will look at things like your legal and risk. Are your contracts in place? Are you ready to protect yourself? But your readiness is also about your teams. Are your teams organized and structured in the way? Your readiness is about your data. Do you have your data in a centralized place that you can use and leverage to do that? Your content, is that all in a place where you can control it and manage it and look at it and see it? And so there's a whole series of readiness that we look at first before we even go out and sort of start using it. For ourselves, we got to a point where we accelerate our pitches. Creative ideas and creative concepts can be done, from concept to actual visualization in 1/50th the time which allows our teams to be more creative and actually think more about the problems and worry about how do I produce this idea in a comp to let people see that. So.
And I'll just put as well, there's something really interesting about the trust piece as well, because I think as we're all kind of figuring out how we want to be using Gen AI, there's also the responsibility side of it, the ethics side of it, because some of these models, we might be analyzing millions of data points within 5 seconds, but Gen AI is also taught on, as you know, open language models, which have inherent bias in them, may have been designed by a certain demographic, so aren't going to reflect local demographics. So it is a really interesting point when we think about the intersection between media, responsibility, and creativity. We're in this like nexus of choice. And I think we've got to choose where we lean into using Gen AI as well.
Plus like 100 to both of you.
Thank you.
I really loved you talking about the readiness of the team as well. Little plug for Kyle Legg, who I believe is speaking next on this stage as well. But we have been learning that there's new skill sets that are needed. It's not like, oh, you just cut that part of your brain out and you can just like use AI to replace it. We have to learn all about prompts. And I think one of the most exciting things about this moment is that everyone's kind of at the same place. We're all starting at a similar spot. So for especially people at the beginning of their careers, this is the time that you can go explore more, try new things. I mean, every stage of your career, you should be wanting to learn and try new things. But this is the time for you kind of to get ahead, to be the one that is doing the research, be the one who is going to the webinars, that's learning new things, that can speak intelligently about AI. We're all looking for those people in our craft right now.
And I think as well, then it's decentralizing where decisions are being made. And I think that's also really important, again, when we think about the global aspect of maybe some of our roles. It's opening up an epoch that we've never really kind of been in before, where it doesn't matter what your skill set is. If you're at the start of your career or at the tail end of your career, you're on the same playing field now, which is a unique part of career history, I will say.
Yeah, I would say that I think the biggest fear our creatives have had, and I say that in the past tense, is this fear that AI is going to take their jobs away. And our teams actually, they just put a whole thing out around, are your creatives AI ready? And this was written by our creatives. It was actually written by a designer. And it's a whole idea of prompt engineering and thinking differently. And the point that hit home to me of what I think anybody that is a creator, designer, copywriter, whatever it is, like anyone, AI is not going to take your job away. What AI is like digital photography. It's like nonlinear editing. It's a tool that the more you master and learn how to use it, the better it'll be. Because if anybody, like these models that are out there, if I put in a set of prompts and you put in a set of prompts, you're going to get basically the same answer. So it's thinking about how do you actually interface and react and work with the tools to get something different out of the machines, and that's a creative process.
I also do love that a lot of the times it's just a starting point, too. I truly believe that you still need a human touch, especially in any piece of creativity. I can tell if someone submits a piece of copy to me that is done just by AI. It's just obvious still. So maybe it's a great
Fingers
place.
are all messed up.
I know. I'm like, why is there an uppercase in the middle of this sentence? No, but it is a really great starting point that can get your brain working and then allow you to take it that final mile, just like Candle, into miles for some reason. But that it allows you to put your own spin on it. So I get excited about what we're going to create that's going to be even more new and exciting because of it.
Thank you all. We do have a few minutes for questions from the audience. If you want to put your hand up, we'll bring some microphones around.
We're like, we can talk about AI some more.
As a neuroplasticity anthropologist,
Love
What
that.
a title.
Great title.
how do you address the new training and open your people's mind to learn and to let go of the project because it's going to take on its own life? And I think once I realized that in business, and I've been in business 60 years, I was able to let it go and share more openly with my coworkers. They were my employees or my contractors, and we got more creative by being open. So I think that this is the Holding on is the bad part.
I'll just
Does someone want to take that?
I'll just start with, so the interesting question under there, humans learn by playing. Play with the tools. Once you play with tools, and that has actually been this great mystery, I think, with tools like AI and other, is that if you don't play with it, you kind of only can imagine what it can do, but once you start playing with it, you start to learn, and it starts to unlock. And that's no different than human-to-human interaction, human-to-machine interaction. Play with it, that's how we're going to learn. That's how we do it.
And I'll build on that too, and I think, yeah, great question as well, because I think what I also see it as, it's unlocking fear. I know that sounds silly, but in the business world, you're scared to say you don't know something. You're scared to say, I don't understand how something works. But I think what Marissa said earlier about we're all at the same kind of playing field, level kind of playing field. Again, it's a unique moment that teach teams to lean in, teach teams to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't understand why you're telling me in finance that I'm a storyteller. And I think if we allow, I think, AI and tools like Canva to reshape, I think, again, how people are showing up in their career, that's when you're going to start unlocking some of that as well and making lives a lot easier is the goal.
Thank you. I think we had another question right behind.
Question for all of you, but Marissa, you specifically said people in the beginning of their career and kind of getting ahead in AI. Any resources that you recommend, or books or podcasts and places to learn on that kind of thing?
Okay, I'm totally biased here. We have a learning platform at Salesforce called Trailhead, and it's a free learning platform. We have a lot of great AI trails in there. We have people that actually are getting certifications that you can put publicly on your LinkedIn. So that's a great place to start. I mean, if you even just listen to Scott Galloway, he's talking about AI on like a daily, on his podcast every moment of every day. So I think that it's hard to not be confronted by AI. And again, it's my bias towards free learning and certifications.
Thank you. Any other questions? Over here?
As people who run large marketing teams and have had experience in this field for a bit, what do you think is, I guess, like the key to success with running this group of all like really creative people with different assets, different skill sets? How do you manage that, and how do you maximize efficiency?
Okay, so we've been talking about this a lot. First of all, leading is hard. Let's just like start out there. Can we all agree on that? There's a lot of personalities, but to be the ultimate best leader that you can possibly be, it's really helping the people that work for you succeed, making that space for them. I think I used at first I was like, I'm an offensive lineman when it comes to my team. I am going to push people out of the way. I'm going to help them find the right answers, and I'm going to let them shine. I think I moved on, sorry about my sports analogies. Then I was like, nope, I'm a tight end because I also want to be able to run with the ball. And this was in comparison to Nate.
Because we were talking about this last night, it's so funny. And I was saying, I think my role and how I've always viewed it is I'm like a conductor of like an incredible orchestra, because I can't play the cello and I can't play the tuba or whatever it is, but the people that I work with can. And I'm not trying to take a second away from them, but you have to start understanding where strengths are. There's a first chair in the orchestra for a reason, but it doesn't take anything away from the person in the second or third chair. And so that's what I think you've got to, or that's how I at least approach it anyway, is allow everyone to have their individual strengths and then learn where to lean in and kind of elevate those two.
And just know when people aren't in their right space, it doesn't mean they're bad. It's help them find their unique skill sets and help them find where their unique skill sets are actually going to be valuable. And usually if someone comes to you and is like, I'm unhappy, it's because you're not taking advantage of what they're really good at. And once you find that spot, magic happens. And it's really special to see.
I'm trying to see you. There you are. Okay. One thing that I sort of think about also is that, and it goes back to like the new skills and the new training, right? There have been defined roles of what people do, but what's really interesting, and particularly the younger generation of kids coming out of school that are more digitally native, that are using tools differently, they're much more unicorns or hybrids, right? We have people that can do that are art directors, but they can do motion graphic editing. We have people that are writers, but they can also do other things, right? And so part of that is also not creating sort of departmental walls where you're almost like, I do this and then you do that, and then it's sort of like get the people together. And the challenge is not everyone's got the same skills. So the challenge is like finding the right athletes. I'm going to use your sports now. Finding the right athletes and putting that team together in a way that like helps them be multidisciplinary creatives and multidisciplinary marketers with that.
We have time for one more question. If there was one.
This might be a more traditional question, but what would you advise yourself 5 years ago? Like, what kind of piece of advice is important to do marketing?
Go do it.
So, we just did a study, CMOs. CMOs that last longer than 48 months are ones that actually have an appreciation for data, have an appreciation for tech, and understand how to use that. And understand how to use that in the context of creativity. And the advice that I went to design school. I always say I went to design school for education, but Deloitte gave me a business degree. And to be able to actually learn not just the creative storytelling side, but learn what data can do for you, learn what tech can do for you, learn that side of the business, because those are inextricable from each other. So I would actually encourage anybody that's studying to be a marketer today to make sure you have that backdrop and understanding. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but you have to have a real intimate understanding of it.
I agree. I'd say other than investing in maybe a mass company 5 years ago, that would have been a good idea.
Startup.
Exactly, good startup. I think stay fascinated by what you do. I think it can be really hard when you're in the grind, when you're in the day-to-day, when you're in meetings, to remember why you went to school in the first place, to get into this fascinating field that we live in. Again, this really pivotal time when media, specifically marketing, has the abilities to it does change the world. I know that sounds a little big, but it is. And so that's what I'd recommend, is make sure you remind yourself of the wonder of what you want to do. Stay hungry. Keep learning. I think you never stop learning. I always say you should be learning in the last week of your life. And so I think that would be my recommendation to myself 5 years ago.
I've got a lot of advice for myself 5 years ago. I think the first thing, though, is that a good manager is going to make or break your role. And a lot of the time, you look at a job description and you're like, that's awful or that's awesome. It doesn't really matter. Your job is going to be so dependent on who you're working with and who you're working for that when you're applying for roles, those job descriptions kind of go out the window once you actually get into that role. So I'd say that those relationships are really important. And in general, especially in marketing, relationships are everything. Just to open doors. And I think the second part about that is you're not going to be the best at everything. And if you are, that is awesome, and I'll hire you immediately. But if you can recognize and have those relationships with people that have that unique talent or unique skills, you're going to find that once you get them all together, you're going to be able to make that really amazing work happen.
Zach, what would your advice be 5 years ago?
Someone asked me this earlier, and I actually think the most important thing, maybe to build on Mark's point, is being multidisciplinary. Get involved in social, brand, PR, MarTech, data, expose yourself to as many facets that you can. And to the point about the orchestra, I think the magic for marketing is where it all comes together. So that would be my advice.
The only other thing I would probably say is I should have invested in Canva 5 years ago. I think so.
We tried.
Still time.
That feels like a good note to close out. So thank you, Mark, Nate, Marissa.
Thank you.
Thank you all for
Thanks,
joining.
Zach.
We really appreciate it. We'll be hanging back for a second, so if you do want to say hi or ask any follow-ups, please do. Enjoy the rest of the day.